Okay, so welcome to Kitzur Shulchan Aruch class, the abridged code of Jewish law. Okay, so before we actually get started in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, we'll just mention that this Shabbos coming up is going to be one of the four special, we have every year, four special Shabboses between, before Purim until after Purim. So it's always in around the month of Adar. We start usually we start just before Adar, and we end by Nisan, the four special weeks. So it ends up being over a period usually of about 6 weeks. We have four special pashas. So even though we just had an Adar, we're halfway through an Adar, but it's the first Adar, which is the extra one. So we have these four special pashas, four special Torah readings in the second Adar, or as a lead up to the second Adar. So the first one is this Shabbos. So it's always either the Shabbos before Rosh Chodesh Adar, before the first day of Adar, so the very last Shabbos of the month before, or if Rosh Chodesh Adar itself falls out in the Shabbos. So the first day of Adar is Shabbos, and we do it then.
So you have a first Adar, and then you have another Adar.
That's right. Adar. And we have, should probably just double check in the calendar, because we have 29 days. Yeah, so it's going to be, no, it's not this week, because this week is going to be, Shabbos is the 22nd. No, but one more Shabbos. There we go. Lucky I'm not the math teacher. Adding 7 and 7 that way. Okay. So but we have coming up anyway, the four special weeks, and the first one is called Pasha Shkolim. So we read an extra, so we take out two Torah scrolls. Right, so from the first Torah scroll, we read the regular Pasha, and then from the second one, we read about the mitzvah of giving half a shekel. So what happened was each household, each man who was 20 years or older, he would give half a shekel. And although when the Jews were traveling in the wilderness, they also used that as a census to count how many Jews there were. But that was really a one-off. The rest of the time, it was used for the communal offerings. So every day, in addition to the daily offerings that were communal, there was also for Shabbos and Yom Tov. So the communal offerings, every Jew was meant to be a part owner. It was meant to be on behalf, that wasn't just a communal offering someone offered on behalf of everyone else, but in fact, everyone was meant to own it. So what happened is that everyone would give their half shekel. A shekel was a coin, but a shekel really is a weight in silver. So this coin wasn't half a coin. It was a coin that was half the size, half the weight of silver of the shekel. And everyone chipped in, and the communal offerings were purchased with this money. And that way went from communal pools. So everyone had ownership in each of the communal offerings. And the reason that we read it close to or on Rosh Chodesh Adar, if it's a Shabbos, it's because that's when they started to make the announcements and they would make the collections. They gave a month's notice because it was the next month. We started taking from the New Year's, the new batch of coins. And it took a month to just logistically to collect them, deliver them. So that's why it was around this time of the year. That's coming up soon. Unfortunately, at the moment, we don't have a Beis Mikdash. Hopefully, maybe before Rosh Chodesh Adar, God willing, we will have a Beis Mikdash. And we'll be able to give a half shekel, and we'll contribute to the communal offerings. But till now, we haven't had that opportunity, so we really sort of we read it as a remembrance, so we don't forget about it, and hopefully to inspire in us a desire that we should daven and we should try and do a mitzvahs better, that the situation should change, and we will be able to do it. So without getting too sidetracked into it, we understand everyone has to chip in, and why half a shekel? Why not a whole shekel? And one of the reasons, as with anything in Torah being a product of Hashem's infinite intellect, so we can go infinitely deep. But one of the ideas is that to emphasize every Jew on their own is a half. And when you do something together with the community, so contributing to something, a communal project, doesn't have to be contributing, but something as part of the community, that's when we become a whole. But a Jew on his own is a half. So also gives us the idea to be able to get involved in things, be part of something bigger than ourselves. So that's the tremendous mitzvah. God willing, we'll be able to do it soon, and we'll be reading about it coming up. Okay. We are up to chapter 21. Chapter 21. So to give an introduction to chapter 21, there's a term called an oinus and a term called a shoigeg. Now we might potentially translate both of them as a mistake, but there's a fundamental difference. An oinus is a mistake that's totally beyond one's control. In other words, there's nothing you could have done to change it. So, I'll make up a silly example, but just sometimes really extreme examples just help clarify the idea. Obviously, in life, it's much more gray, but just to get the idea, a person walking down the street, there was a sudden, unexpected earthquake, and it threw him in the air, and he landed on the light switch, and he turned the light on the Shabbos. All right. Okay, now that's probably not a very realistic example, but that's not, there's nothing you could have done differently. It was unexpected. There's no precautions you could have taken. It was totally beyond his control. In a different environment, let's say someone is asked to look after somebody's phone. Let's say, can you watch my phone for me? Sure. So the person is watching the phone. Along comes someone and puts a gun to his head and says, give me the phone. He's not obligated to give up his life to guard the phone. That's called an oinus, beyond his control. What's he meant to do? Someone put a gun to his head. Maybe if a person came unarmed and he has a stick, he can fight off the person and we say it's not beyond his control. But someone comes, 20 armed robbers with submachine guns come and they say, give us the phone. It's an oinus. It's totally beyond his control. So that's one type of doing something or not doing something unintentionally. The other type is shoigeg. Shoigeg is, it's also unintentional, and the person did not mean to do it, but there's a small degree of negligence. Okay, if it's total negligence, then it's considered almost on purpose. But a small degree of negligence. So let's give another example. So let's say there was a person who they wake up in the morning and they forget it's Shabbos. And they go about their normal morning routine and they light the stove, they put on the kettle, God forbid, and they boil up the water, make their coffee. After they have a bit of caffeine, they wake up and they say, oh, it's Shabbos. So if they wouldn't remember it was Shabbos, they never would have done it. But to light a fire, they never would have done it. They forgot. So you might say it's not their fault at all. But what makes it a shogeg, a small degree of negligence, is that I'm sure, though I haven't yet had this opportunity, God willing, we'll have it very soon. But if you win the $2 billion lottery and the ticket's under your pillow and you're picking it up and you got to take it in tomorrow to pick up the check, I don't think if you wake up in the middle of the night, you're going to forget about it. You got to remember, when something's important enough, people remember it. And if they forget, it's because it's not so important. You used to have all these people that tell you exactly where they were, say the assassination of JFK, exactly where they were and what they were doing. Now, how many people remember that many years ago what they were doing on a certain day? It's because something happened that made it important, and it was like seared into their psyche. So if Shabbos is important enough to a person, there's no such thing as forgetting a Shabbos. So even though it's unintentional, the person would never deliberately have done it. If they would have remembered, for sure, everything would have been different. But there's a certain degree, a small level of negligence, and that's a shogeg. So shogeg is when there's a small amount of negligence, and an oines is a person who was totally beyond their control. And then there's on purpose, right? That's called the mazid. So we're going to discuss in this chapter about a person who he missed one of the prayers. So is he allowed to make it up, or is there a way to make it up? So we're going to say that if it's an oines or a shogeg, the person has a way to make it up, and we'll see in the chapter what we do. But if the person deliberately just didn't daven, they just no, I don't want to, or I have something else that I want to do. So sometimes the other thing you have to do makes it an oines or shogeg, right? It could really be emergency. You have to run someone to the hospital, God forbid. So it's an oines. It's not his fault. He missed it, even though he made a conscious decision to miss it. But it's beyond his control. You don't leave the person that needs to get urgently to hospital and say, "Excuse me, just wait there patiently while I daven." Right? You just run. You got to take them, do what you need to do. But if it's deliberate without a just cause, then the person can't make it up. So that's what we're going to be discussing. So Aleph, number 1. So again, chapter 21. Some people might join us after we start the introduction. After start the introduction, chapter 21, law 1. Aleph. Kavanis Baba Siman Yuches, we already explained in chapter 18. Shim Avaz Man Tefillah B'Mezid, that if a person missed the time to daven in on purpose, Ein Lo Tashlum, there's no way to make it up. They've missed it. Just by the way, the word that we usually use, I don't like to say the word sin, because sin is a very Christian concept, but just for lack of a better translation, the word that we usually use in Hebrew is aveira. Now, aveira technically, not saying how we use it in conversation, but it's technical term. Aveira comes from the root of the word is avar, is like past. What it means is lost opportunity. Person had a chance, let's use this as an example, to daven, to connect to Hashem, to speak to Hashem, to build a relationship. And they didn't. Although they might have another opportunity tomorrow, but that opportunity, today's opportunity, that's gone. It's gone forever. And that's the idea of aveira. As opposed to chait, which is more normally if a person does something negative. Chait comes from the root of the word means to dent, to nick, to make like a little, like in a knife, you're making the little nick, it's not smooth anymore. And so in other words, what happens is when a person does these things, they damage themselves. a person damages himself spiritually. So neither of those are the English word sin. But this person, he deliberately missed the time to daven. There's nothing he can do. He can't make it up. That opportunity has left the world forever. Avol, im machmas shgaga, or oines lispalo. If it was because of shoygeg, was a mistake, made an error, or an oines was beyond his control, that he didn't daven, or he made a mistake in a way which we mentioned, for example, you have to say Yalav Yavai on the Rosh Chodesh, let's say Mincha, and he forgot it by mistake, and when he realizes it, it's too late to have Mincha. It's finished. So that's also an idea of a shogeg. Yachol lashlim al achat filas mechla. So as long as it wasn't deliberate, he's able to make it up at the next prayer service. So what does he do? First, he has to daven the one that's its time. So let's use the example. He didn't daven mincha. So it was shogeg. Shogeg, an example of a shogeg was a little bit of negligence, was he lost track of the time. So it was a little bit of negligence. He should have paid attention. But if he would have realized the time, he for sure would have davened. There's no question about it. Just he got so caught up in what he was doing, he missed it. Or an oines was beyond his control. God forbid he had to, let's say, take someone to the hospital as an example. Or he left something out, right? He didn't see Yalav Yavai. And now it's dark. So once it comes nightfall, you can't daven mincha anymore. The time for mincha is over. So what does he do? First, he has to daven the prayer that it's its time. So he does Mariv. So he does the Mariv, regular Mariv service. He comes to the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, and he davens the Amidah first with the intention that this is for Mariv. And after that, he does Shemona Esrei again, the Amidah again, Tfilas HaTashlum, to make it up. So Dahaino, so he's going to give an example, a different example of what we said. Im lo yispalo shachris, the person did not daven shachris, the morning service. Azai she gives man tefillas mincha, now it's become time for mincha. It's already in the afternoon. Yispalo matchila tefillas l'shem mincha. First he davens the Shemon Esrei for the sake of mincha. V'oime tachnun, and he says the tachnun. V'achekach miyad oime ashrei, and straight afterwards he says ashrei again. Mispalo oid Shemon Esrei b'shel shachris. And then he says a second Shemona Esrei at mincha time in order to make up for shachris. That's example number one. Example number two is the one that I gave before. If the person did not daven mincha, first he davens marif, and he davens the Shemona Esrei. And then he waits, he pauses after the first Shemona Esrei, that's for Mariv, the time it takes to walk about a little over 6 feet. But here it doesn't say Ashrei, because Ashrei doesn't belong at night. El miyad yispalel tefillah Shemona Esrei. Now he davens the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, immediately, b'shul mincha, for the sake of mincha. And ve'im lo yispalel arvis, and if it was Mariv, the person didn't daven, they didn't do the evening service. As the achat for the shachris, then after he davens Shemona Esrei for shachris in the morning service, yoyim etachnon, he says the tachnon v'ashrei, he says ashrei. V'yispalot finish Shemona Esrei l'shem arvis, and then he davens the second Shemona Esrei to make up for the evening service that he missed out. V'achakach yoyim, and then afterwards he continues alam l'sayach and l'tzion v'chol, etc. Continues with the morning prayer. In the same way that you're not meant to eat before regular Shachris Shemona Esrei, and with the same exceptions, and the same, you're not meant to eat, but there's all the exceptions we learned the person's unable to concentrate in davening, if they're not feeling, or whatever happens to be, all the exceptions, the same rules that apply to when you can eat for the regular davening also apply for the makeup davening. So if you're davening early in the morning and you're strong and healthy and various things, then you don't eat, you daven both, and off you go. If you're davening later, person's not able to concentrate, then you could potentially eat. We learned about an earlier chapter. Okay, so that's the general principle. Any questions on that?
What happens if you miss Musaf?
Musaf is there's not really a makeup for Musaf, because Musaf is a standalone. These three, Shachos, Mincha, Maariv, are connected to each other. So if we miss one, it can go to the next one. But Musaf is a standalone.
I have a question for you, Rabbi.
Yes.
What if somebody does stuff with the military,
Yep.
and then he has a mandatory training that is absolutely positively that he must attend?
Yep. So that's a good
What
question.
happens then?
So in the military, so first of all, that might be a factor that someone should think about before they join the military. But sometimes it's not their choice. It's an emergency situation. There's a draft. There's all different things. Or
Okay,
even if they made the wrong choice. But the bottom line is they're there now. So if that would probably go as an onus.
Let me just back up one thing.
Yeah.
I am a volunteer for the Coast Guard. Okay. And there are times that I have to have training, and they usually do it on a Saturday because they can have a lot more people involved instead of 5 or 6. They want to get as much people involved for this particular training so that they don't have to do as many of them. And it's not every Saturday. It's whenever they choose and how bad they need this training, people that need this training. That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah. So before we get to that question, let's start just as general. Let's say someone's in the army and they have certain responsibilities. So that would be considered like an oine, something beyond their control. The specific question you're asking, without answering you specifically, because I'd have to ask you without answering you specifically, because I'd have to ask a lot more questions to give a specific answer. And it's the rest of the group would be one, but generally giving some general ideas, which can be for everyone as well. So a lot of these activities really depends on the circumstances, right? Meaning like this: how essential is it for this individual to volunteer? How essential is the work and the training that's being done? Again, if we use extreme examples, usually life is not extreme. It's usually gray, and you have to look at each individual case individually. But if we just get general extreme examples to understand the idea, if it's an area where there's very dangerous seas and affects a lot of people, and there's literally life-saving things every day, as an example, and it's something that requires a very high level of training, and there's not enough people. Then you're talking about a life-threatening situation that's overruling what normally happens. The other extreme, if obviously the more volunteers the better, but they didn't necessarily need everyone, and this training, it's not really that essential, this particular training, and there's not really that many things that are pressing. It's more of a calm area. It's more just keeping things going smoothly. Then you would say that a person can't. Then obviously you have everything in between. So any individual with their individual specific question. If they really want someone to answer them exactly what they should do, they need to sit with someone.
Okay.
And go through
Let me say
their
one.
exacts.
Let me say one thing from
Yeah.
what you just said. In my case, I'm going out with other Coast Guard members, patrolling the water, looking for people on life rafts coming from other countries that don't belong in
Yeah.
the United States, and saving lives of people that their boat may be taking on water or whatever the case may be. That's what my training details.
Yeah. So it's going to depend on the frequency of what really needs to happen. But if you want, we can speak. Maybe not in the class. We go into the details. But let's go to number 3.
Okay.
Ein tashlum in the tefillah.
Rabbi?
Sorry, number two, not 3. Yeah.
I just wanted to know, like, this is totally different, of course, but the situation of Tzahal, like the guys in the Israeli army, I mean, wouldn't that be considered involved right now in a life-saving situation?
Yeah, and so again, so that in this context, that would be an oines, would be something beyond the control. In peace times, so you have different units. You have units that make accommodations for religious soldiers, and ones that and when they don't, it's often on principle, which is
there was an event.
That's another story. Yeah, but so if you're talking about so if we talk about this, God willing, every unit would make the religious accommodations that are necessary. So in a peacetime, obviously that's one situation, and in a wartime, it's a totally different situation. So there can't be a blanket. There's no blanket rule that you can do this and can do that. Each thing's going to depend on the circumstances. So that's why the units that are for religious soldiers, they have people that also soldiers, but are rabbis, and they help make decisions of what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And obviously, like any life-threatening situation, we err on the side of caution. And so if there's not time to ask someone, or there's not someone around and you have to make a call, so we err on the side of caution, or make sure that we do something that's going to save the lives.
Rabbi Warren, I just want to relate that there was a situation where one soldier who had neglected to say the Shemona Esrei in the morning, it for some reason he had felt to do it at Mincha time, and he turned to the direction where it turned out that he saw a metal sliding back in Gaza, and out popped a Hamasnik with an RPG, and he was able to shout, and they were able to shoot the guy before he got the RPG off, which otherwise would have killed the guys in his group and another group as well. So I just
saved because he davened.
Exactly. So a lot of guys who weren't religious before started to daven with them after that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing. Base number 2. So he didn't daven when there was time to daven. Why didn't he do that? He thought he would time later. So what happened is he didn't daven at 8 o'clock like usual because there was something important, not urgent or life-threatening. It was something he felt was important. And he figured he'll daven at 11 or whatever. You're still done before midday. And what happened was it ended up there wasn't time. So we're talking about a little bit more now than a regular, so little extra negligence. Or someone was really preoccupied with his business matters in order not to prevent the loss. They Cain hefsid zman tefillah, and because of this, he missed out. He didn't daven in the right time. Now, even though really you're not allowed to lose out in the time of davening because of financial loss, nevertheless, mikra oinus. We're still going to call this a little bit of an oinus. Now, obviously, it depends what it is. So we're talking about, like the guy only has one milk cow, and that's how he sells the milk in the shtetl, and the cow fell down a pit. And if he doesn't save it, that's it. He's finished, and he has no money for a new cow. So he got totally, was discombobulated, didn't know what's going on. All he could think was, I got to save my cow. Wasn't thinking straight. So a situation like that, we're going to say
it's really hard to imagine a situation like that unless you're in a pit with a cow.
Yeah. Well, nowadays, Baruch Hashem, the average person has a bit better. Many of us have a lot better standard of living, and if you leave something for a few hours, it's really not going to make a huge difference. Or even the loss, it's not a loss, but there've been plenty of times using that as an example where people, that's it, they're finished, and there's no way to get anything else. So it totally takes over one's mind. So that person can also make it up. And also, if a person was drunk, and therefore he didn't daven, because when a person's drunk, and drunk doesn't have to be drunk off the face, right? We said if a person's a little bit, if they're in a situation where they wouldn't go and speak in front of a king, or the president, let's say, you not quite how you should be, so therefore you can't daven. Nechshav gam kain ka'oinus is also considered an oinus beyond his control. Even though the person had his l'chaim when he shouldn't have, it was close to the time of davening, and he shouldn't have had it till after he davened. So we got a little bit what we call unintentional. There's quite a bit of leeway there. Gimel, number 3. He got excited. It was during Adar, so I was trying to be. It was Purim cotton. We had like on Friday the mini Purim, so we had too many l'chaims. Let's say. It's just speaking of Purim cotton, just because we're in the Purim, we're getting into the Purim mood. Don't want to interrupt the learning, but who played tennis in the Megillah? Do you know? So Mordechai and Haman, because they served in Achashverosh's court. Right. And who had a telephone? Achashverosh. First he gave Haman a ring, and then he hung up. All right. That's just to get you in the Purim mood. Okay. Number 3.
How do you know that Achashverosh held by the liturgy of the Arizal, the Zachari?
Yeah, how?
Because it says that he went from Hodu to Cush. Cush is by Baruch Shamar.
Very good. There we go. Gimel, or maybe it's Sfadi, Ein tashlim l'tefillah. You can only make up a missed davening at the next davening. Right? So a person misses Shachris, can make it up Mincha. Misses Mincha, can make up Mariv. But if it's more than that, he missed Shachris,
and I know I'm going to miss
Mincha, didn't daven Mincha, and now it's Mariv, it's too late. Ein lo oy tashlum. You can't make it up anymore. Going for example, In lo his spalo lo shachris lo mincha. He didn't daven shachris or mincha. As a mincha yesh the shum lacha arvis asmuchalo. Mincha he can make up now at the marif at the evening service, the next prayer afterwards. Al shachris ain't not a shlumim, but the shachris is you can't make it up. Given others shneis manei tefillos shleis palo, because now 2 periods of davening have passed and he didn't daven. Once the second one goes, it's all over. Loy bismana mincha, because he didn't do it in its time. He didn't make it up in the time of mincha, the afternoon service. Now it's come evening. It's too late. And now we're coming to a question that was asked before. Daled, number 4. Ach b'yom sheish bo musaf. Well, no, we're not talking about missing musaf now. We're talking about missing shachris. But a day that there is musaf. Im lo yispal shachris, if the person didn't daven shachris, yachal shimul ach mincha, he can still make it up after mincha, even though technically there was a musaf in between. That doesn't count as 2 periods. And this is because it says in brackets, really, although mincha should be done before midday, but after the fact, you could do until sunset, till shkia, musaf. Al-achat tfilas musaf, eine yachal hashin tfilas shachris. But after musaf, we don't make up the shachris. Why? Even though technically you could, but why don't we? Because what happened is we already mentioned the musaf service, so it's just inappropriate, because what happened is they correspond to the daily offerings. And the shachris is the tomid, the daily offering that was brought in the morning, and the musaf is brought after that. That's if you already daven musaf, not just the time of musaf. But if the time of shachris didn't pass, you can still daven shachris after musaf. So we got a few situations here. Situation number 1 is we missed shachris, we did not yet daven musaf. We can make it up at mincha. Even though technically there should have been a musaf in between, it's not considered missing 2 prayer times, because musaf extends till the evening. So you can do musaf afterwards, do mincha twice, do musaf afterwards. If that's situation number 1. Situation number 2, a person missed shachris, he davened the musaf, and now it comes to mincha, he doesn't daven shachris again, because it's not appropriate to do a shachris after musaf. Situation number 3 was he did daven musaf, but he did not. Midday didn't arrive yet. It's still technically shachris time. So even though he did daven musaf, he can still daven shachris. So not making it up, but actually doing it in its correct time. So it's not in its correct order, but it's technically in the correct time. Okay. Number 5. So as we said, the tefillah that he missed, the davening that he missed, he can only make it up at the next davening. But not when that time elapsed. So he's going to explain what we mean by that. Could go in for example. If a person, there's a long time after the person davens, so the person missed the davening, and then he davens the next one on time, and then he wakes up, he realizes a bunch of hours later, even though technically he still could have davened mincha then, and the yachal is pala oy tashlim tefillah shehefsid, v'shloi tiknu tashlim tefillah shehefsid el is man shu oisik tefillah shechayv shal. Because when we say you make it up at the next davening, it's when you're doing the next davening. So let's give an example. A person missed shachris, davens mincha 2 o'clock. And then at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, he realizes, you know what? And it's still light. You could daven mincha now, technically. He realizes that he didn't daven shachris. He can't make it up because if he had not yet davened mincha, he could daven mincha that time and then make up the
Wait,
shachris.
the chakras he did was a makeup for the night before. So it didn't
No.
count for
We're
him
talking
to
about he did.
chakras.
Well, it could be that also, but in it, keeping it simpler, he missed chakras. So in theory, if he would daven mincha at 6 o'clock, he could do a second Shemon Esrei and make it up because it's still the time for mincha. He didn't miss the next time. But we said when he does the makeup, it has to be while he's davening the next. It's not just in the time of the next davening. It's while he's doing the next davening. So if he happened to daven at 2 and he finished.
He can't do it again in this man.
Yeah, that's right. You can't make it up even though it's still technically time for mincha. Because the concept is since he's at the moment occupied in davening, he can then make up the one he missed. But once he's no longer occupied in the next davening, even though technically he could have davened at that time, it's too late.
Not a makeup.
Yeah, too late to make up. Vav, number 6. Tfilas tashlimim shel mispalo, chayv mispalo k'mosh mispalo as tfilas chayv. Now, when you're doing the makeup, you make it up in the time. I'm going to skip ahead and just explain what that means. So what I mean is, let's say you missed mincha on a Friday, so it was a weekday davening. So he's making it up at the evening service, but a Shabbos. So now he does a Shabbos davening.
Right.
And vice versa. He missed the last davening of Shabbos. Now he does, or it was Yom Tov. And then you got Chol Hamoed, or in other words, whenever he does a makeup, he doesn't daven as the one he missed. He does 2 of the one he's doing now. That's what he does. So I could go in for an example. Shabbos, right? Example we gave. He missed mincha on Friday. This Pala Avish time Shabbos. He does the Shemon Esrei of the evening service of Shabbos twice. Now, even though the second one is coming as a makeup for a weekday Shemon Esrei, nevertheless, Shabbos, since right now it's Shabbos, Shabbos, he does a Shabbos davening, right? Because the weekday Shemon Esrei is 19 brachas and Shabbos is 7. And the first 3 and last 3 are the same, but the middle one is a total different blessing. And not only that, even after the fact, he didn't realize, or he forgot, he did his evening service Shabbos, and then he did a weekday one to make up for mincha. He didn't do anything. He has to do it again.
Right, with 7 brachas, he has to do now Shemon Esrei.
Yep. Sorry, I skipped the line. Likewise, if it was Erev Rosh Chodesh, if he didn't daven mincha, now he's now he says the evening service, he says special prayer for Rosh Chodesh. And if he didn't daven the evening service on Rosh Chodesh, and now he does Shachris twice. Now, if he forgot Yalav Yavoy, afilu b'shniyah, even in the second one, Chayzim is daven again. Even though if he would have forgotten the evening, if he did it in the right time, he wouldn't have to repeat. And now he's doing a makeup for that one, but since it's a Shachris time, and a Shachris, the Yalav Yavoy is essential, now it becomes essential as well for the makeup. So, and after the brackets, but Shabbos, im lo yispalo mincha, and Shabbos, if he didn't daven mincha, didn't do the afternoon service, mispalo avis gam kain shtaim shel chol. Now he does the weekday evening Shemon Esrei twice. But there is a difference. But there is one difference. So Atachonotano is like a mini Havdalah, which we add into the evening service at the end of Shabbos. So he doesn't do that in the second one because once you made Havdalah, you made Havdalah already. It's not like a Yalav Yabay, which becomes part of the Shemona Esrei. This is like an addition because we need to make Havdalah. But once you've actually done it, it's done.
So the second time you don't do Atachanantanu, but
Correct.
you do Yalav.
Yes. But so in the first Shemona Esrei, the regular Mariv one, we say Atachanantanu. B'shniya Eino Amru. And the second one we don't say. How come? The Tambazeh, the reason is since Atachanantanu is a form of Havdalah, you don't need to make Havdalah twice in davening. But in the Haifach, and likewise the opposite. Right? If he forgot Mariv at the end of Shabbos, Shachach Avis Matzah Shabbos, Mispal Shachris time. Now he says Shachris twice. And now in the makeup one, he does say Atachanantanu because Atachanantanu is a that's what a person needs to do.
A makeup. So Sunday morning at Shachris, you could be saying Atachanantanu.
Yeah. Some people, I mean, it's not so. That's how he paskins. Other people are going to paskin. Once you made Havdalah on the kois, you made Havdalah in the cup. You're not going to say it again. But
you didn't daven.
Yeah.
But you didn't daven. You made you may have Havdalah, but you didn't do Marav.
Yeah. All right. Number 7. Zayin. So a person he davened at Mincha Rosh Chodesh, but he forgot to say Yalav Yavai. Forgot to mention Rosh Chodesh. So as we learned in a previous chapter, he has to repeat. But he forgot about it, right? So he didn't realize till afterwards. And he realizes it's dark already.
Right. It's
Marav ain't Rosh Chodesh. And now it's not Rosh Chodesh anymore. If so, if he davens Marav twice, he didn't actually gain anything. Because he can't say Yalav anymore.
Right.
And to daven without Yalav, he did that already. So we're not talking about he missed it totally. He said it, but he left out Yalav. So in that case, we don't do the makeup. It's one of the exceptions. Because even though missing Yalav, it says if he didn't say it, but since he technically did, and he can't say Yalav anyway, you don't really gain anything.
To what end?
Yeah, there's no point. Okay, Ches, number 8. Tefillas Musaf. So we have Musaf, Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh, Yontiv, Chol Moed. Now, even though technically the time for Musaf is the entire day, therefore, Mariv technically is the next prayer. So if someone forgot to say Musaf, technically Mariv is the next prayer. Nevertheless, there's no makeup for Musaf at night time. Why?
Technically, the next one is Mariv, not Mincha?
Yeah. No, because technically
this is Musaf L'Shachris.
Yes, but b'diavad you could daven Musaf Toshkia.
Okay.
So
he missed
even after
Musaf.
Mincha. So technically the next tefillah is Marv. So in that case, so you would theoretically do Marv twice, but we don't. Why? Because this Musaf is not at night. Mishum the Phyllis Musaf Nixon Mishum on the Shalma Farms for Seinu. And Shavas Mana Batakabonli. So why do we daven Musaf? We daven in place of the offering, the Musaf offering. And if the Musaf offering was not brought, it became night before it was brought, that Musaf is lost. It's gone. You can't bring Musaf that day anymore. So, since the Musaf that it's representing is gone, there's no makeup for it, there's no way to do anything later. So therefore, the davening we do instead of the Musaf, once we get to night, it's gone. Test number 9. Meshot Sarkis Spala Shachris time or Minchas time. So on a daven Shachris twice or Minchas twice. Im Hoshlich Sibur, if he's the Chazan, and therefore he's going to say the Chazan's repetition. He doesn't actually daven personally twice and do the repetition. He can have in mind that the repetition he's doing is his second, his makeup one. Which would be funny for Shachris on a Sunday morning and he says, Atachanatanu. That would get some reactions
if you're
from the
then
crowd.
maybe you can't be Chazan then.
Yeah.
If
maybe.
you're the Chazan,
I probably can. I was being facetious, you know. There's certain shuls you could say almost anything in any language and no one would know the difference. But certain shuls, there's 10 guys waiting to pounce.
Yeah.
On the smallest thing.
Yeah.
So that would be exciting, one of those. Okay. Yud. Mishin is tapik loy imispal loy. So till now we've spoken about the person missed. What if he doesn't remember? Now that might be a bigger problem. If you honestly can't remember if you davened or not, you know that goes to show that one put a lot of feeling into it. But he doesn't remember. Bisman hazeh ein choizim mispal. So nowadays we wouldn't daven. In the past, we would say do a tefillas nadava. Tefillas nadava is like an optional prayer. It's a gift. The same way a person could offer a offering the base of mikdash, you come just donate an animal. So there's such a thing. But as most people aren't able to concentrate and put the proper feeling and kavanas and intentions into the davening, so we try to avoid optionals. What we have to do, okay, even if it's second rate, we do our best. Put in our best effort, but we have to do. But to do a second rate when it's not obligatory, so we're not going to do that. Any questions? Okay.
yeah,
So
where are we, Rebbe? I know you're reading the Parakim, and I haven't found it yet.
We're up
Where
to
are
Siman
we
Chaf
now?
Beis. So we just finished Siman Chaf Aleph.
Saf Aleph?
Chaf Aleph.
Chaf Aleph, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we want to start the next chapter today. We'll talk a little more about the mitzvahs of Purim, so we can get planned. Now, 4 mitzvahs of Purim. One is to hear the Megillah, and actually it's to hear it twice, the night of Purim and the day of Purim. We have Mishalach Manos, that's to give one person at least a gift of 2 different food. Then we have Matanas Avyonim, to give 2 poor people a significant, really at least as much, you know, often like in a lot of outreach places, they give you a dime or something, you know, and give that. But really it should be a meal, what it will cost to buy a meal, cheap meal, at least. You can give to more people after that, after 2 people. Once you give to more people, you know, it could be 50 cents, be $1, doesn't matter what it is. But at least the 2 you do the mitzvah with, there should be enough to buy a small meal. And the 4th mitzvah is the Purim feast, which is in the daytime of Purim. So it's a Sunday this year, so I'm sure there's going to be every community is going to have something extremely exciting for the feast. So I just wanted to speak a little about the Matanos of Yonim, because people they start planning early. Some people get very excited, let's have a theme, and and there's poetry, and there's they put into it, and and there's
In
we got to give to
Matanisla of
50,000 different
Yonim?
people.
In Matanisla of Yonim or in Shalach
No,
Manas?
Mashalach Manas, sorry.
Okay, no.
Mashalach Manas. Did I say, if I said Matanos of Yonim by mistake, I apologize.
No.
So, yeah.
I was going to ask, do the Yonim have to be Jewish?
Yes. At least the two you do the mitzvah. You can give it to someone else as well. That's fine.
Yeah,
So the yeah. And sometimes becomes this communal pressure to give to every single person in the community, and out come 1,000, shalach manos. So although it's a beautiful thing to give shalach manos, and every mitzvah, it's always better to go beyond the minimum. So don't just give to one person, give to quite a few people. And of course, one of the reasons for Tanis of Yonim is to encourage friendship, develop friendship between Jews. So obviously, the more people you give them something nice, it encourages friendship. But when it comes to allocating resources, some people, Baruch Hashem, there's no limits on their financial resources, and they can give as much shalach manos and as much gifts to the poor as no problems. But many of us have a limited income, and
Baruch
therefore,
Hashem.
yes, okay. And therefore, there's a limit to how much we can spend on Purim.
Baruch
So,
Hashem.
a person should try and put they should spend more on the gifts to the needy than on the food gifts. That's important thing. Just one thing to bear in mind when we're planning. The Yetzer Hara doesn't come to us and say, don't do Mashalach Manos. Who's going to listen? What the Yetzer Hara does is get us too excited and too caught up in it, and therefore we neglect the gifts to the poor. Right? Or we come late to Megillah reading because we're making deliveries, etc. So that's how the Yetzer Hara works. And I think that's just one thing just to bear in mind. One other thing before we finish is one of the reasons for the gifts is if people don't have food for the Purim feast and they're embarrassed to ask. And so by giving the food gifts you have, so I think I mentioned this in past years, about 20 something years ago. So Baruch Hashem, we're nowhere near that situation now, but 20 something years ago, one time we literally did not have any food in the house for the Purim feast, and there wasn't any money to go change that situation, and we didn't have. So at that time I was teaching a class, had about, I think it was 18 kids in the class, and most of them lived in the area, so let's just say about 15 brought shalach manos. So between them, one brought challahs. They had no idea. Just one put challahs in shalach manos. Another one had a cold cuts platter. One of them brought a nice bottle of wine. Someone else brought some nice things for dessert. It ended up, and we that year we had a most beautiful Purim feast, and it all came from so when we get the shalach manos, it shouldn't just be a bunch of candies and
chametz.
It should be something.
Right.
Yeah, it should be something that's a meal food.
My wife says
Yeah,
it's no
David.
mitzvah. It's no mitzvah to pack extra chametz in there.
That's right, David.
Yeah, how would you answer somebody that's like unaware of all the different details of Judaism? And he says the main thing is the daven to Hashem, and why all the emphasis on times?
You
Just
decide.
Okay, someone who really doesn't know and
Right.
they don't have the background, it could be for them. I wouldn't bother with the times. In other words, pour out your heart to Hashem, and let's go step by step. It's I think one, on the one hand, it's this halacha, right? And halacha means that's how Hashem wants it done. So we want to do what Hashem wants, and therefore when we talk with others, we want to tell them what Hashem wants. On the other hand, unfortunately, many people have been deprived of the Jewish heritage. I would actually say it's been stolen from them, and so they come at a certain stage, and when you climb a ladder, you can only go one rung at a time. So when they're ready for it, I think the answer is basically it's few parts. Number one is that why do we daven to Hashem? To connect to Hashem. So this is the time that Hashem made for us. It's like Hashem wants us to do this davening at this time. And if it's about relationship building, we're doing what Hashem wants. So that's one point. The next point is the reason it is set up like that is that it's very hard to connect to the spiritual. It's like trying to go through a maze. And even some of the doorways in the maze are locked. So if you go with a map and keys, you can get through. But if you try to go through without that, it doesn't work. You're going to get stuck. So the time, the methodology, how we do order, all of these things are like going through this maze. That's comparing how difficult it is to connect to spirituality with the map and the keys. So I think when they're ready, that's the basic idea. Obviously, we can go deeper and deeper, but I think that's where I initially start. But I wouldn't mention that to someone who's not there yet. All right. Any other questions? Okay, so we'll wish everyone a wonderful week.
Nowadays
Yeah.
you can tell people, Baruch Hashem, it's a deep, intense experience, and you don't just suddenly come upon it and feel it. It's something that takes years of repetition or whatever. Zayigazun, thank you.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Tefillah is the Rabbanan. Am I correct? It's not the rice.
Well, it's
Depends
both. How's that for a
both.
good Jewish answer?
So when the temple is built, are we going to go back to Korban? Actually,
Well, we'll have kabbonis. Whether we daven, in second base of Mikdash, they
but
also
what about
davened.
Tefillah? What about Tefillah?
In second base of Mikdash, they also davened. So probably we'll continue. But when you ask in general, is davening from the Torah or is it from the rabbis? It's both. Meaning there is a mitzvah to daven. Amongst the Rishonim, there's two views on that. One view, we'll call it the Rambam, but it's the Rambam and others, is that the mitzvah from the Torah to daven is when you have a need. You feel you need something, so you should daven. But there's another view that a Jew has a mitzvah daven every day. Maybe not a set time during the day, maybe not more than once a day. More, right? But every day to daven. So either way, there is a mitzvah from the Torah to daven. The way we have it at the moment, that it's at certain times, and this is the way we do it, that's the Rabbanon, because most people, if they had to daven spontaneously, are not able to make that connection.
Rubber dub, thanks for the grub. Yay, Hashem.
Thank you, Yashikon. Thank you.
No problems. Have a wonderful week. A good Shabbos. We'll see everyone next week, God willing. You're welcome.
Thank you,
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you,
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.